Starfield has excited a lot of people, and for good reason. It's coming from a very well-known studio who's made some of the most remarkable games of the last 20 years. And Starfield is their next game, headed up by the one and only Todd Howard. You want to see the most totally unnecessary thing I have in this entire studio that I make videos in? I have a life-size cardboard cutout of Todd, who has been in all of my Bethesda videos for the last, 2 years. I found some British company that makes a cardboard cutout of Todd Howard, a fairly obscure video game designer that only Giga nerds know by name. But I found it, and now he stays with me whenever I make these videos. I know this has to make Todd so uncomfortable. I've said this before, I don't know what I would do if I found out somebody had a cardboard cutout of me, but you know what? If you fly close to the sun, Todd, and you make amazing games, you gotta be ready for weirdos in their basement in Colorado. You gotta be ready for them to have cardboard cutouts of you. I mean, it comes with the territory. What did you expect? But going back to Starfield, a lot of people are pretty pumped for this, and a lot of other people are straight up pessimists when it comes to anything regarding Bethesda, especially after Fallout 76, their disappointment with Fallout 4. It's all over the place. It seems like with this game, you are either a diehard fanboy that will excuse anything they do, or you are just a straight up cynic and you hate everything and it doesn't matter what they could possibly bring to the table. It's gonna suck, it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. In this video, I aim to take a rational, skeptical look at the game, evaluating it as level-headedly as I possibly can to see whether or not this warrants any sort of hype or excitement at all. My hope is that we can come to a good understanding of what this game has to offer by the end of this video. And if you're not totally hyped up by the end of it, hopefully you have an appreciation for what they're trying to do. And if you're going into this super hyped up, hopefully I can play devil's advocate a little bit to bring that hype and those expectations back down into reality a little bit. Because I take it upon myself in a weird way to try and talk people off the cliff of hype with games, because often it can just lead to disappointment. In my mind, if you are hyped up to here for a game and then it comes out and it's really, really good, but it's here, you're still gonna be pretty disappointed because it didn't meet your expectation. Whereas if you keep those expectations in check, you're gonna expect this, and then when it comes along and is up here, you're gonna be all the more thrilled because it exceeded those expectations. And on the flip side, if you expected it to be here and instead of coming up and being amazing, it ends up flopping and it's like a Cyberpunk 2077 situation, just a total dumpster fire, you're okay. Because that is much easier to handle, this to here, in terms of discrepancy of expectations, than expecting it to be up here and then having a Cyberpunk 2077 situation. But listen, I'm not gonna do the Xbot fanboy thing where I just hype this up for no reason or just blindly repeating the same talking points as Bethesda's marketing staff and then being like, see, that means the game will be good. I'm gonna try to look at this fairly both ways, and we'll see where we come out on the other side. The way I want to start this, though, is by explaining all of the reasons people are really hyped for the game and to praise Bethesda for a very, very ambitious vision that they're going forward with here. First things first, of course, BGS has a pretty stellar reputation when you go back over the course of 20 years. They've released some of the most iconic video games in recent history. Of course, being credited with the reboot of the Fallout franchise with Fallout 3 and then Fallout 4. They released Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, which received rave reviews when it launched, in addition to 2011's Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, a game which is still played by millions to this day. And while some people didn't really like Fallout 4 at launch, I was one of those people that was pretty disappointed because, again, I expected this and then it came in here and thus I was disappointed. But that being said, looking at the game now, I can really appreciate many of the amazing things they did in that game. As an open world adventure looter shooter, Fallout 4 is phenomenal, especially with regard to the world building and everything that they put into every little nitty gritty detail in the world as you explore it. If you're looking for a narrative RPG, you're going to be sorely disappointed, as I was, but when you go into it with the proper expectations, you can have an amazing time. And Starfield represents their first major passion project and original IP in decades. Todd has been hinting at this game, as far as I can tell, since the early 2000s. He's always wanted to make this game, but had to wait for the technology to meet his expectations and what he wanted to do with it. And similar to other games I've talked about recently, like Immortals of Avium, a game that was the passion project of the original creative director of Dead Space, which is coming out in July. Whenever I hear that a major player in game design is finally making one of their passion projects, I sit up and listen, because they already have proven they know what it takes to make a really good game, as Todd has. And now we're gonna see what he is really passionate about, and that gets me pretty pumped. Love him or hate him, this guy knows how to make good games. He's done it time and time again, and he's won more Game of the Year awards than you can shake a stick at. Granted, he also has some problems, but we're gonna get to those later. And aside from Todd, the team at Bethesda Game Studios really is world class. There's a reason this company is so beloved by gaming fans around the world. They are especially talented when it comes to, as I mentioned before, world design. More specifically, environmental storytelling. The placement of every single object, character, dead NPC, everything in these games is extremely intentional and serves the narrative and the mood of the world that they're crafting. I played Forspoken just like a month ago or something. I don't even remember when. It was such a dumpster fire, and had one of the most utterly forgettable open worlds that I can think of in recent memory. Even Gotham Knights, I thought, did a better job of it. And that world was pretty and it was gorgeous. They had a lot of high-end tech pushing the graphics for that thing. It just didn't work though. It takes more than that to make a world that's worth exploring, and what Bethesda Game Studios has demonstrated time and time again is that they understand what it takes to make a world worth exploring. That might be a little trickier here for reasons we'll get into in just a moment, but at least they've shown that they can do it with one big map, as they did in Fallout 4 and Skyrim, Oblivion, Fallout 3, all of those games. In addition, this is a sci-fi space sim being created by a team of RPG developers. That gets somebody like me really, really excited, because I really enjoy space sims, and it's being built by a team that is very good at open world adventure RPG games. That's awesome. I like me some Star Citizen, Elite Dangerous, Mass Effect, those games, but it's been years since we got a good Mass Effect. It's been never since we got an official release of Star Citizen. And Elite Dangerous is good in small doses, but it's not the same thing. And for a lot of people, this game represents like their Cyberpunk 2077. It represents a company they love going and starting to create a game in a genre that they love that's never been touched by that developer before. For a lot of people, Starfield is a once-in-a-lifetime game that they are super pumped for. In addition to all of this, the scale of the game is absolutely outrageous as far as we can tell. According to Todd Howard, there are over 1,000 planets to explore. There are 4 major cities, bigger than anything Bethesda Game Studios has ever built before, and there's also 250,000 lines of dialogue. Compare that to the roughly 60,000 lines of dialogue they had in Skyrim, and it's pretty wild to think of just how many conversations are going to be in this game. Pair with that all the countless items to be found, loot to be gathered, settlements to be crafted, guns to be customized, and ships to be built, and I think you've got a game that's pretty compelling and massive to boot. And already expectations are getting crazy out of hand. I mean, if you don't believe me, just pop over to the Starfield subreddit and you will see some crazy things. I get it. These people are super pumped for the game and are very excited. I can't blame you for that. However, it's kind of insane what some people are doing to get hyped up on this. It's like a little scary. We'll come back to the subreddit in just a moment, because I actually really want to say something very positive about the community over there that I wasn't expecting, but again, we'll get to that in just a moment. And listen, one of the reasons that the hype has gotten so crazy high for this game is because Todd, our good friend here, is an amazing salesman. It doesn't matter if you love BGS games, if you think Todd is an unethical pile of garbage, it doesn't matter. He's an amazing salesman. There's no way around it. He just is. Whenever this man goes up on stage in front of an audience, he commands respect. He has real gravitas. When I went to E3 2019, the last E3 that they had before the world ended and before they canceled it because everybody stopped caring, I actually got to attend the event where Elon Musk and Todd Howard had a sit down with Jeff Keighley. And besides it being extremely awkward and one of the most bizarre things I've ever witnessed in person, it was pretty interesting to see Todd Howard kind of take control of the stage, even though he's up there with Elon freaking Musk and the king of bad eye contact, Jeff Keighley. Okay, it's not that impressive that he outshined Jeff Keighley because he famously has terrible stage presence. However, Elon Musk, he's kind of like an imposing force and dude. I don't know if you guys have ever seen him in person, but the dude is freaking massive. He's built like a Viking. It's really weird, but not like a buff Viking, like the Viking Jarl who stays back and drinks mead, but still could probably crush you if he wanted to. He's that kind of force, you know? But the point is, Todd's a great showman and salesman, and that's why you kind of have to be careful when you start to get hyped up whenever he presents something to you, because he is in part so successful because he understands what gamers want to hear, what will get them excited, and he knows how to play with people's hype to get the game built and built and built to the point where it just takes off into the stratosphere. I think this is one of those reasons why a lot of people have speculated that perhaps some of the leaks that have come out for Starfield and before that for Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, some of those leaks might be orchestrated by Todd because they seem to feed into this cyclical hype cycle that comes with every BGS games. I don't personally buy into that, but I do think that it's funny people have that perception. And as I've said before, sometimes perception's more important than reality. If everybody thinks one thing is true and it's not actually true, to a certain extent, the effect of everybody thinking it's true is going to overpower the truth of the situation. But you know what, setting all of that aside, this game sounds really, really intriguing. Why not be extremely hyped? Well, because there's some warning signs, some red flags, and some reasons to not just buy in blindly to everything that Todd is promising. Buckle up, this is the part of the video where people tend to get a little pissed because they think that I'm just trying to piss on their parade, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to offer both sides of the discussion to you and let you make up your mind. I'll toss my thoughts in at the very end after we go through these things, but here are just a few tidbits to keep in mind once you start to feel like getting super, super hyped for Starfield and to start taking a week off of work and pre-ordering the collector's edition, blah, blah, blah. First things first, the scale. As we just outlined, this game is massive. Is that good? Maybe. It could also be a really bad thing. Todd discussed how there's over 1,000 planets. I don't think it's that controversial of a thing to say that 1,000 planets sounds like a lot of planets. Bethesda Game Studios is known for their handcrafted worlds, but when you have 1,000 planets, not 1,000 like 20 mile by 20 mile maps or 5 mile by 5 mile maps, no, like 1,000 planet-sized planets. How do you handcraft environments that are interesting, that are worth exploring? I don't know. I don't think you can. I think you have to rely a lot on procedural generation of points of interest and dynamic quests and things, and that could work at least somewhat, but I do think it would be very, very easy for the game to quickly grow repetitive because you've started to lean more into quantity over quality. And that's a huge concern for me personally because I love Bethesda for the more densely packed areas where they carefully design every little tidbit, and to hear them lean so heavily into this procedurally generated tech, that worries me because Bethesda's not known for great procedurally generated tech. They're known for great handcrafted worlds. Now they could come along and blow us all away and have the best tech in the industry for procedurally generated worlds that are also super interesting to explore, but there's no evidence of that at this point. There's no evidence pointing for or against it, but we do know that Bethesda doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to technology. More on that in a minute. In the same vein, the 250,000 lines of dialogue, which I previously stated as a really, really good thing, might not necessarily be a great addition. Again, I don't think it's controversial. 250,000 lines of dialogues, a lot of dialogue. It just is. And many people who love Bethesda Game Studios games love the older games like Fallout 3, like Skyrim, and those games were headed up in the narrative department by this guy. This is Emil Pagliarulo. He is the man, the myth, the legend behind the overwhelming success of Skyrim, the world building, the feeling, the tone, all of that stuff, the dragon shouts, the Fus Roda, all of that comes from this guy. And funnily enough, he's been at Bethesda for a long time, and when I found him on Twitter like a year ago, I thought he looked really familiar. And then I looked up the old Making of Fallout 3 documentary from like 2008, and I realized he was also in that documentary, but this was him. Like, the dude's lost a ton of weight. Like, look at that. Good for him, right? Isn't that insane? That's crazy, dude. Congratulations. What a beast. But the point is, Emil Pagliarulo is a design director now. Prior to this, he's worked as like a writer, and it seems as though he supervises a lot of the narrative design of these games, figuring out what works, what doesn't, establishing the tone and the broad themes within the story. The point is, this guy has a lot to do with the success of these games, and 250,000 lines of dialogue is a lot more than he can personally supervise. This means there's a whole team of writers, a staff of people overseeing all of this, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe they are just that amazing that all of these writers can work together and make the vision come into reality. But again, we're just gonna have to wait until we see it. There's also this information that's come to light after the Lex Friedman podcast that Todd Howard went on like a month or two ago, wherein he described how Starfield's gonna have 4 major cities. Now, earlier I mentioned that, again, in sort of a really positive and upbeat way, because I wanted to show how you can change somebody's perception of something just by your tone of voice, being like, wow, Starfield's gonna have 4 cities like Boston in Fallout 4. Isn't that great? Well, it's 4 cities across over 1,000 planets. So that means that there's probably at least 996 planets where all they have, the biggest thing they have, are like small outposts. And at that point, it starts to sound like the overwhelming majority of planets are going to be very, very empty. Not every planet can have like 15 giga cities. I understand that. It's just not practical. However, that's one of the issues with putting 1,000 freaking planets into your video game. Sometimes it really seems like you might have bitten off more than you could chew. What he says specifically is it has all of the services you would expect, and you can work on your ship there. The factions touch that, but that's also the headquarters for the Constellation, which is the faction that you join. That is the last group of space explorers, kind of like NASA meets Indiana Jones meets the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And that's specifically referencing New Atlantis, which is the capital city of the United Colonies. Again, trying to keep expectations in check, I would expect there to be probably a handful of big-ish cities that serve as the central hubs for collecting gear, for upgrading your ship and armor, whatever else you have, and for gaining quests, and for progressing through the story and that type of thing. It's not going to be a situation where each planet you travel to across these multiple solar systems each have huge cities for you to explore. If you're expecting that, you're going to be very disappointed. This can still be great. This can still be awesome with a handcrafted city bigger than anything they did in Fallout 4 or Skyrim, but multiple of those across different planets. That sounds awesome, but just understand that that's what we're getting. Don't expect every one of the 1,000 planets to bring huge cities, because that's just not going to happen. And speaking of keeping expectations in check, let's talk a little bit about the biggest issue with BGS games, the albatross around their neck, the tech. We've seen a little bit of Starfield gameplay, and from what we've seen, there's a lot of cool stuff. As I mentioned, the colony building, vehicle upgrades and building, weapon customization. The thing that really excites me personally is the spaceship building and customization. I think that looks super, super cool. But each of these things, while they look like great additions, bring with it another element of complexity. And Starfield, as far as we understand it, is running in the Creation Engine once more. The same engine behind Fallout 76, behind Fallout 4, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Oblivion. And again, I don't think it's even a controversial thing to say that Bethesda has had very outdated tech compared to their competitors since around 2007. Their games are still amazing, which is a testament to how good their games are, that they don't need to be the most technologically impressive to command respect and audiences. But it is something to note that they're trying to do something very technologically, let's just say, heavy this time around. And they're doing it with an engine that has been outdated consistently for over a decade. And that gets me a little concerned, especially when you reference bugs and optimization and frame rate. You might have noticed already in the gameplay you've seen, there are frame drops pretty consistently in the footage that we've been shown, and these guys get to choose what gameplay to show and when. They don't have to show you gameplay that has frame drops. They're trying to show you the best footage that they have. So if the best footage they have has frame drops all over the place, you have to wonder what the worst footage they have looks like. And as I mentioned earlier, Todd Howard did an interview with Lex Friedman on his podcast, episode 342. That was really good. It's like 3 hours of Todd Howard just speaking candidly about game development and everything. And I actually went back through the podcast and found the exact moment where Todd Howard discusses frame rate and their philosophy with regard to what they sacrifice for what. And in it, he says he's perfectly comfortable with 30 FPS, which it's important to note is what the trailer and all of the gameplay footage we've seen so far is running at. It's all been 4K 30 footage. And if we're seeing frame drops in 4K 30 footage, it makes me really skeptical as to whether or not we're going to be getting a 60 FPS mode on consoles at launch. But more on that in a minute. I just want to show you Todd saying this himself so you don't say that I'm taking him out of context or something. This is what Todd said exactly. As you can see, the timestamp on the bottom, 29:57. If you want to go back through and fact check me, this is Todd Howard discussing the frame rates and their philosophy with regard to that.
Usually we will start with let the player have as much agency and do as many things as they can as possible. And we will sacrifice some graphic fidelity for that, some speed for that. You know, we could make a game that, you know, traditionally our games are, you know, we okay with 30 frames a second as long as it looks really good and the simulation's running and all of those things. So we'll sacrifice some of that fidelity for the player experience.
And while some people might take that and be like, oh, he's just said traditionally we've been okay with 30 FPS. They have at every turn refused to discuss the frame rate and what they're targeting here. So if you're one of these players that's expecting 60 FPS on console, again, you might be a little disappointed because I would put some good money down that they are going to be launching this at 30, especially in light of what just dropped with Redfall, where just a few days ago, as of the time of the recording of this video, they announced that they're launching that game in just a quality mode at 30 FPS on launch, and they'll be bringing a performance mode to get to 60 frames at some point in the future. I would be shocked if we get a performance mode on launch day for Starfield. I would love to be wrong, but I just don't see it happening, especially because it seems like they're already running into issues with optimization and getting this game running the way that they want to. And they have discussed time and time again having to make certain sacrifices for the sake of the different things thematically that they want to do with space travel and all of this. And I just don't see them getting above 30 on console, unfortunately. And when I dropped a survey asking you guys what you thought of this and the 30 FPS mode potential debacle, the spread has actually been pretty interesting. 49% of you said that you don't care. 22% of you say it's totally unacceptable in 2023, won't be playing. I would still expect a good number of those people to be like PlayStation gamers who are just upset. So might not be quite as high as 22, but still that's very, very high. And then as for everybody else, 17% said I don't like it, but I'll still be playing. 11% said don't care at all. I'll be playing no matter what. And this is just very intriguing. I would be shocked if 20% of the gamer population refuses to play the game because it's launching at 30 FPS, but you know what? Maybe. I guess let me know in the comments what you think of this. If you're going to boycott it if it launches only at 30 on console, or if you are going to be upset but still play it anyways on Game Pass. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'm intrigued. Another thing that has a lot of people pretty concerned is the gunplay. Everything we've seen thus far is actually quite lackluster. The guns look super light and floaty. There's very little impact with each bullet shot, and it actually seems to be a significant step backwards from the progress they made with Fallout 4. But to play devil's advocate here, Fallout 4 also, most of the footage that we look at nowadays is running very smoothly at 60 frames. It's also after multiple patches. And it's usually with players who are pretty good at playing the game. It seems like whoever they gave the controller to wasn't very good at the gunplay, so I don't know if that had anything to do with the gunplay looking worse than it actually is in Starfield, but either way, it was not a great showing. And when I did a collaboration with Mr. Matty Plays back in the fall, I actually was pretty impressed with Matty, who's generally very, very positive and excited about Bethesda stuff, that he was able to even admit that the gunplay did not look very good. And I guess that brings me to something I do want to give a lot of praise to the Bethesda community for. I've been very pleasantly surprised at how level-headed so many of these people are on the subreddit, and speaking with Maddie and other people who are very, very hyped. There's still fanboys out there, you know, there's still the loans out there and all these people that, you know, BGS can do no wrong. But I've been amazed at just how many people are willing to critically evaluate things like this one. Is it wrong to be excited? Posted 4 hours ago of a guy that just honestly is wondering if it's wrong to be super hyped or pumped, and a lot of people are offering some pretty level-headed advice. Like this one, it's not wrong, but it could lead to disappointment. I have lower expectations, and I'm basically expecting something as good as Fallout 4, which I enjoyed but found disappointing. This person, I can still hope it's a great game. The only other games I'm looking forward to this year are Stalker and Cyberpunk DLC. If Starfield is a flop or bad launch, going to be a boring year, understandable. Doc Nano said, only if you can't handle being disappointed would it be a bad thing. I'm very excited, but I know there's a chance the game will be worse than I expect. It's very ambitious as a game, and I think Bethesda are just about the only folks I would trust to pull it off. Given the importance to Microsoft and the measured delays, I am pretty confident it will be a great game, but we never know until it's in our hands. These takes are so refreshing, especially in light of some of the crazy fanboyism surrounding a bunch of other games we've discussed in the last year or two. It seems like a large portion of the Bethesda community has actually matured a ton in the last few years, probably thanks to games like Cyberpunk and Gotham Knights and things that people were kind of excited for that just fell flat. And this brings me to kind of the central point of this whole video. Like, why is this even important? Why does this matter? Why do we talk about it? And put simply, it is to try and measure our expectations. It's extremely easy for people to get overhyped and then for a game to underdeliver. And that leads to people getting in a situation where they feel like they can't enjoy a pretty good game because they were expecting a great game. And so you'll have somebody play a title that's easily 8 out of 10, but they find it bad because they were expecting it to be the second coming of Hideo Kojima. But on the flip side, if you can keep those expectations in check, you can enjoy okay games, you can enjoy good games, even pretty good games and great games, all similarly, because you simply went into it with a level head and didn't allow yourself to get so hyped up. I understand that hype can be really, really fun. I understand that blind excitement and praise for a company is easy because you can just say, oh, I love PlayStation. PlayStation, good. Everything they do is good. I love it. Same with Xbox. Everything Xbox does is good. I love everything. It doesn't matter if it launches at 30. That's good for me. My tribe loves it. I get it. Tribalism is easy. You can turn your brain off and everybody else does your thinking for you. But if you want to avoid that type of disappointment that comes with tribalistic thinking, and more than anything, if you just want to think a little bit more critically about this stuff, I think you can avoid a lot of that mental anguish that comes along with games that don't live up to those expectations. And honestly, I find myself, ever since trying to really skeptically evaluate each title that comes along, I find myself enjoying a lot more games because I go into them appreciating the good and understanding and accepting the bad for what it is. I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding that skepticism is just cynicism or pessimism. And that's for a bunch of reasons that I've talked about on the stream and I won't get into now. If you want to hear my thoughts, pop over to the live stream. Just look up Luke Stevens live in the search bar. I'm probably live when you're watching this video because I'm live all the time. And just ask me for clarity on it. But what I'll say for now is that skepticism is simply not believing a proposition or accepting a proposition until there is adequate evidence to accept that proposition. In this case, the question at hand is whether or not you should be hyped for Starfield, or whether or not you should pre-order or be pumped for it, or whatever else you want to phrase it as. And for that, I think that there's pros, there's cons, there's arguments and pieces of evidence in favor of it, and there's things to look at it that actively detract from it. It's easy to be pessimistic after Fallout 76 because Bethesda, in that case, they knew that it was a disaster and they didn't care. In my mind, there's no other way to put the Fallout 76 situation than saying it was simply an unethical, shameful, unscrupulous, reprehensible, iniquitous, ignominious, deplorable, disgusting display of corporate greed. They knew that was a dumpster fire and they didn't care. They released it anyways to get the quick paycheck so they could look more profitable, have higher revenue numbers, to be more appealing for a Microsoft acquisition. They knew what they were doing was slimy and unethical, and they didn't care. And that's why I don't give Bethesda the benefit of the doubt. That's why I don't go like, oh, well, there's things that I'm iffy on, but you know what? They have amazed me so many times before. I'm going to give that like a plus 10 to this company just because of their reputation. As far as I'm concerned, their reputation has taken a serious ding, and it's going to take a lot more than some updates to Fallout 76 to win me back over. With a studio like Rockstar, they come around and they announce GTA 6 or something, I'm probably much more inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt and just be like, oh no, this game's probably going to be totally amazing and blow us all away for a decade because everything they touch turns to gold. But on the other hand, right now with BGS, they did a lot of damage, and I'm not ready to just forgive them because they've dropped some DLC and because Todd Howard got up there in his leather jacket and started sweet talking me all over again. But that doesn't mean that we should be cynical pricks and unwilling to evaluate this fairly. They do have to win us over. They aren't entitled to our money or fandom, but we shouldn't just blindly dismiss the game as, oh, it's going to be terrible because Fallout 76 was terrible. That's not necessarily a given. The fact certain systems have been taken out entirely as far as we can tell, like the gore system from Fallout, totally stripped as far as we can tell, with only minor blood spatter remaining. I'm not joking. Go back through all of the gameplay that they've shared and try to find like a gore system functioning. It seems like they cut that out for stability or for some other system that they traded out. Or something that I haven't even touched on yet, which is the surface to space transition. It's not seamless like in No Man's Sky, which released in 2016, or in Star Citizen or any of these other games. There's a load screen between them. You notice what they just did there? It's not seamless. You have to actually load from the surface into space. That for me is kind of a ding, not because I think that a game is bad because of that, but because the standard has been established at this point by other games that are years and years old, that surface to space transitions are technologically possible and reasonable to do. Todd is quoted here as saying, people have asked, can you fly the ship straight down to the planet? No. We decided early on in the project that the on surface is one reality, and then when you're in space, it's another reality. And I understand that distinction. I understand their choice to do that and to avoid that. But the simple truth of the matter is that the expectation for a lot of players is that this game will have features that were established back in 2016 with other games like No Man's Sky. Even though the game launched totally broken, it even had this surface to space seamless transition with no load screens. And at this point, that game is, I know it's crazy to say, 7 years old. Going on a decade ago is when games started doing that. And so to see this game come along and say, nope, we're not doing that, it just feels like a disappointment. Even if it's not that big of a deal on paper, the perception is that that should be done in the same way as like those seamless cinematic to gameplay transitions that Rockstar started doing in like 2018 with Red Dead Redemption 2. Now the expectation is that games should be able to do that, and there shouldn't be a fade in, fade out between cutscenes. Is the game necessarily bad if they break the trend or what the standard is, technologically speaking, for something in AAA game development? No, the game could be great and still have that issue. Just like if the game launches at 30 FPS, it could still be great. Some of the best games, I would say even the best games in history, such as The Last of Us or Red Dead 2 or Breath of the Wild, a lot of these more modern, tremendous games all launched at 30 FPS and were still amazing. But when it launches at 30 and people expect 60, or at least an option for 60, it's still a disappointment. You know, the story with Bethesda Game Studios seems to me, ever since Skyrim, to be a tale of expectations versus reality not being in sync. Because ever since Skyrim, it seems like everybody just expects Bethesda to live up to the modern standard of tech, of graphical fidelity, for them to come along and be able to do everything they did last time, and then all of the new promises just as well. And Bethesda just simply isn't able to do that. They have a much larger team now than they did back in 2011, certainly, but BGS has a different way of functioning. They're not the team that focuses on having the highest end fidelity and crazy graphical prowess. It's just not their priority. Their priority is to build good games efficiently and quickly with the team that they have. And the very simple question at the core of all of this is just whether or not Bethesda is being lazy or if this is just honestly the best that they can do. And I'm more convinced at this point that this is the best that they can do with the team that they have, that they are not able to push the graphical boundary any farther, that they're not able to add the surface to space transition, that they're not able to do all of these other things we see from these other huge quadruple A games, simply because they're a smaller team, the budgets are different, and their priorities are different. And that could be a great thing, because it could be one of these situations where we have a game that, while not the best looking title of the year, is one of the best video games of the year and totally surpasses all expectations. On the other hand, it might be just yet another Bethesda game that launches feeling like it's 10 years out of date, is super buggy and broken, and that doesn't quite live up to the expectations people have because Todd Howard overpromised and underdelivered. Hopefully that's not the case, but it's a possibility. Now, to avoid leaving you like depressed, I will say that there have been some rumors and leaks from, for example, the XNC podcast host Colt Eastwood, where apparently he spoke with some people who were playtesters of Starfield, and they had generally very positive things to say about it. He claims to have spoken to a channel of playtesters who have been closely involved with the game, and he's been hearing great things about it. Based on what he's heard, Bethesda has, quote, nailed, end quote, the sense of scale, whatever that means. They go on to describe that all he's been hearing are positive impressions from the people he's spoken to, some of whom he claimed were pessimistic about the game. I would imagine they mean cynical or skeptical of the game, because pessimistic doesn't really make sense in this context, but whatever. And if that is to be believed, that's a good sign that playtesters are impressed with what they've seen and what they've tried. So maybe Bethesda has pulled this off. And as far as I can tell, after evaluating all of this, I'm still suspicious. I'm not going to give Bethesda the benefit of the doubt and just roll over and be like, oh, I'm sure everything's going to be great, because they did really screw us over with Fallout 76, and I'm just not willing to forgive them so quickly. However, the game is extremely ambitious. They're promising a lot here, and if they can pull this off, if Starfield does what they claim it is doing and does it well, it without a doubt is going to be one of the best games of the year and possibly of this generation thus far. However, it's also just as possible that Starfield comes out and is pretty good. Not great, not terrible, but pretty good. And I would also say it's almost like a very high likelihood that this game launches pretty buggy and broken, because literally every game that Bethesda has launched in the last 20 years has launched with a suite of terrible bugs and glitches and frame issues and performance issues and optimization issues. What makes you think this time it will be different? Like, what makes you think, well, this time they'll figure it out. This time they'll get it working and it'll be great. You said that last time, and the time before that, and the time before that. At what point do you just accept that they're bad at optimizing games? But the crazy thing about all of this is that it's coming to Game Pass day one. They're no longer asking you to drop 60, 70 bucks on day one with a pre-order to get the game. Instead, you can just try it. Isn't that crazy? You like, if you have Game Pass already, you just try the game. And if it's awesome for you, you can enjoy it. And if you hate it, you didn't lose any money. Yes, you might still be a little disappointed if it doesn't live up to your expectations, but at the very least, they won't be wasting your money in the same way they might have done in years past. And that's why I think Game Pass is such a phenomenal service for games like this that are really, really iffy, because they remove that risk for so many people. And I think that's awesome. But let me know what you think of Starfield in the comment section below. We will probably be revisiting Starfield after the big showcase that they have in early June, when they're going to be revealing more information about this title. I'm very, very interested, and I'm hoping beyond hope that they pull this off, because if they can do what they're saying they can do, this is going to be amazing. I'm not sold. I've been burned by Bethesda and Todd before, but man, I hope they pull it off. But that's gonna do it for me. Like I said, subscribe, like the video, blah, 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 and join me over on Luke Stevens Live. Just search up in the search bar, Luke Stevens Live. I'm streaming constantly throughout the week. I will probably be live when you're seeing this video go up, so come over, say hi, and if you have any questions, let me know. I might be able to answer. But thank you for watching. I will see you very, very soon. And little tidbit, I have a podcast coming out next week. Buckle up for that. It's going to be pretty good. Follow me on Twitter for all of the updates and news on that. It's pretty exciting. We got some cool stuff going on. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.